This Wednesday. I want to talk about the grades. There's a lot of grading stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about the lectures for the next couple of days, and of course the exam. So homework 10 is out. I'm going to spend a bit of time going over it today, but it was posted yesterday. It is due 1 week from tomorrow at 10 a.m. That is the official due date. You may turn it in up to 24 hours late without any penalty. I may or may not post that online. But just keep in mind that you can turn it in up to 24 hours late without any penalty. 24 hours and 1 minute late gets the standard 25% penalty that we've seen throughout the semester. That, of course, is the last homework of the course and will also be the last part of the game. Once you actually complete the math class, you will have completed, in one form or another, all the different parts of the game. I'm going to spend a bit of time. I also want to show you Lab 12. The Lab 12 is a do-it-at-home lab. You can really do it anywhere you want. You can do it after the lab quiz on Thursday if you so like. We're going to spend some time talking about that. For generally any time an assignment is returned electronically, there is a 10-day period that you can submit regrades. We choose 10 days basically so that at the very end of the semester, we're not dealing with homework 1 regrades. And I did have somebody show up after the final wanting to get a regrade on homework 1 one semester. But for the remaining assignments that need to be returned, that regrade period may have to be shortened a bit. Just because if we return homework 10, so homework 10 is going to be due on, I guess, Wednesday, which is 2 days before the final. By the time we return it, if we wait another 10 days, graduation will have happened. So the regrade period on the remaining assignments will be shorter. If for whatever reason you don't hit the regrade period and you want the regrade, you can come speak to us about it. And if for whatever reason the grades have been submitted, then we can go and submit a grade change form. Obviously, with a reasonable amount of time, if you show up in the fall saying, oh yeah, I want homework 5 regraded, I'll just sort of laugh. So this weekend we got caught up quite a bit with the grading issues. Many regrades were returned. There's still a couple left. We're moving through them pretty well. We returned, I think, 4 assignments, the quiz, 2 labs, and the homework. So we have about 5 assignments left to return. And of course, so it's homework 7, 8, and 9. Homework 10, of course, well, it hasn't been turned in, so it's not about to grade it. Quiz 3 and the 2 labs. Homework 7 is going to take a while. When the grading was set up, it wasn't, well, I'm the one who set it up. I didn't set up the grading very efficiently, so the TAs are spending a lot of time on it. Homeworks 8, 9, and 10 are going to be partially auto-graded. When I say auto-graded, we write a computer program that goes through and checks, does this method work, does that method work, did you declare all your variables, et cetera, et cetera. So that a lot of the stuff that TAs normally would do is going to be done automatically. This is something that only is doable in the last couple assignments. Basically, once you have a class and various parts of a class, whether they be methods or fields, we can start doing this auto-grading thing. What that means is that the homeworks 8, 9, and 10 should be able to be returned. The turnaround time should be much less because a good amount of it is going to be done automatically by the program we write, and then the rest the TAs will have to do. So the reason I bring that up is that the remaining stuff you should be able to get it returned fairly quickly. In fact, I'm hopeful that this week we can get those 5 assignments returned. I'm a little iffy as to whether or not we'll get homework 8 returned in time. I'm sorry, homework 7 returned this week. But most likely homeworks 8, 9, lab 10, and lab 11 should be able to be returned this week. I say should. My goal is to get, by the last day of classes, or maybe the reading day, let's say the reading day, I would like to get everything except for homework 10 graded and returned to you. That's my goal, because this way you can look at your grades online and figure out whether or not you want to take the final. There will be a letter grade posted online. It'll actually say, A-, F+, what have you. And you can then choose whether or not to take the final. Realistically, I don't know if we're going to get homework 10 back in time, just because homework 10 is due about 48 hours before the final is. We'll certainly work on it, but I don't know if homework 10 will be returned in time for that. So, right. There's a whole study thing. If you want to take a study, get $10. I have the forms with me. So we have an exam, of course, this Wednesday. Like the previous exams, it is cumulative. It is going to focus mostly on the creating classes and arrays material that we've spent some time talking about in the last month or so. In the lab quiz, most likely you'll have to create a class, and most likely having some array stuff to deal with. The lab quiz is, of course, open textbook. The exam is not. Let's see. Right, so there's 4 more lectures. Today we're going to spend some time going over assignments, doing a bit of review. Wednesday, of course, is our midterm. Friday, I'm going to spend some time talking about inheritance. That's an advanced topic that you'll be exploring much more in cs101 for those who continue. And then next Monday is going to be a course wrap-up. Let's see. Clickers. The clicker IDs are online, and I'm going to spend some time showing that in a second or two, and I'll spend some time talking about it. Blah, blah, blah. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on this stuff before I move over to the website? Yes?
What's the exam to GGL over there?
Oh, yeah, right. Forgot about that. I thought I had posted the exam 2 grading guidelines. Someone emailed me saying I hadn't. I have them sitting on my computer, so I completely spazzed out and didn't post them. So that's the oh dear part. I will post them very, very soon. I thought I had done it already, but that's me being senile. So obviously you'll have time to submit a regrade. I'm not going to post them tomorrow and tell you the regrade period ended a week ago. Other questions, comments, concerns?
I had a question about
Yes.
The final. So it's up to us to choose whether or not we want to take it.
Yes. The final is completely optional. You can opt to take it, you can opt not to take it. If you do not take the final, then the grade that is shown on the view grade script on the website will be your final course grade. Obviously, we have to wait until homework 10 is returned for that grade to be finalized. Again, we're going to do our best to get homework 10 returned as quick as we can. If you do decide to show up, it's Friday night, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., because I'm sure that's what everybody wants to do on a Friday night. If you do show up to take the final, and you turn it in, you must count that final towards your grade, even if it lowers your grade. However, what you can do is you can show up, look at it, try to take it, realize you don't want to turn it in, rip it up, and hand us the confetti. So you certainly have the option then and there, even if you show up to try to take the final and then decide that you don't want to do it. But it is completely optional. If you do turn it in, obviously unripped up, then we do have to count it towards your grade. Other questions, comments, concerns? All right, so is that a hand up? Yes.
Yeah. Where's lab 12 do?
I'm going to talk about that in 2 seconds. So I'm going to move over to lab 12. So give me 10 seconds on that. Yes.
Is there a makeup time or date for the, if you have at the same time?
As this final? If you have a test, in the past, I would say over 90% of the people who had a conflict opted not to take it. So if you do have a test at the same time and you want to take it, just come speak to me. There's only going to be a handful of those. All right. So for those of you, I do have a couple 4th years in here. For those of you who are 4th years, I'm going to email you ahead of time to check to see if you want to take the final. We have to submit 4th year grades before anybody else's grades so that they can clear them for graduation. So you'll be receiving an email from me about that. All right. So the clicker IDs are online, and here's the problem, is that I believe that for student confidentiality issues, I can't say Jane Smith has clicker ID, blah, blah, blah. So what's listed there are all the clickers IDs that I have received here in cs101. Unfortunately, you have to do a search for your actual clicker ID. My apologies for that. I'm going to see if I can make something that's a bit easier to use, but in the meantime, this gets the information out there. You look on the back, and it's probably, I believe they're in sorted order, but you can just do a Control F or Control S search and find it as well. So that's posted online. Homework 10. We spent some time talking about homework 10 in terms of software development, software engineering, and what computer science is really all about. Now that you've gotten through sort of the basics of programming in this course, what future courses are going to do is going to expand more, not so much just on the programming part, but on the non-programming parts, the problem-solving parts, the design issues, stuff like that. So we have a nice essay that you get to read. This essay makes for great questions on the exam, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to implement the math class. And essentially the math class is going to be, well, there's two classes that you have to deal with. One is the math class, and this, of course, is the map that you use when you move around in the game. And this particular math class, we've given you a fair amount of skeleton code that should get you started. The other class that you have to do is the control class. The control class deals with things like the various methods that allow the game to progress. Taking a turn, checking for starvation, striking people with lightning, that sort of stuff. And what we wanted to do is have you develop all the various parts of the game, but we realized there was a bit too much to break down into homeworks. So we give you a good amount of the control class, and you have to comment it. So instead of you writing the code, you have to make sure that you understand the code, and we're actually going to check your comments to make sure that you actually did read it. So the other thing that I want to point out about the homework is that this thing here is the arrow or the reference diagram for what's going on inside the game. So you've implemented now, this is of course about a week or so old, you've then implemented party, vehicle, and map printer. The remaining things are the map and the control. If you get confused as to what to reference where or how you get an inventory at a given map, map.getLocation at, .getDepot, .getInventory, I just wanted to refer you to that. That's in the daily announcement slides. Okay, other than Lab 12, any questions? Okay, so I wanted to show you this briefly. This is the latest homework graph with homework 9 turned in. And you notice that homework 8 was the not so fun one. Although homework 6 wasn't too popular either. But at least homework, I suppose the silver lining is homework 8 wasn't as intimidating as homework 6. Yeah, that's quite a silver lining. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show okay. So Lab 12 is a lab where you can do it, you can pretty much do it from any computer. It doesn't have to be done from the lab room. We're going to put at the end of the lab quiz something saying, please now go through Lab 12. Basically, it's a chance for us to encourage you to submit the course surveys. I talked about this last time. We're not going to force you to submit the course surveys because I'm all for freedom of choice and whatnot. I don't believe that it's right for me to absolutely force you to submit course surveys, even though some people have, faculty, administration has suggested that we do that. What you do need to do is you need to complete this lab for points, but as I'm going to show you, you can actually get around the whole I need to fill out any surveys. Let me mention that I really like student feedback. As you can probably tell from the fact that every assignment there, I ask for comments, I ask you to rate it, I read them. So if you actually go through this, this is last semester's. I haven't updated it for this semester. But essentially it gives you a chance to rate all of the teaching assistants. You pick a particular teaching assistant who, these 3 aren't there, but let's say Kinga was your teaching assistant, and you could sit there and you basically rate them as to how well they did on the various categories. So you go through and you rate your teaching assistants. There's going to be spots to rate a total of 3 teaching assistants for each lab. And then any additional comments you have about teaching assistants are there. And then there's a couple other questions, such as, have you used a glossary? How many assignments have? How many lecture videos did you watch? That sort of stuff. So, as I said, we're not forcing you to do this. We are going to force you to submit a couple questions on this survey. Mostly because what would happen is if everything is, most of the stuff on the survey is optional. If everything was optional, what would happen is people would forget to select the TA names, and then it would just sort of screw up all the data. So you need to select who your TAs are for the lab. You don't have to rate them. So that's required, but all of these you'll see are optional. You don't have to rate them necessarily. And then I think a couple of these are may or may not be required. So it's going to be like 5, 6, 7 questions that are required in this. You know, it kind of corresponds to the amount of required questions in the others. Please, please, please give us feedback. We like feedback, or I certainly like feedback. I like to know how the TAs did. I like to know how I'm doing, all that stuff. So this is one part of the lab. And in what you have to do for this, you have to submit some file. We give you the file. You don't have to modify it. The other part of the lab is we encourage you to do the toolkit survey. The toolkit survey, of course, on ITC's toolkit, same basic thing, go through and you rate me on various, you know, clothing selection and height and et cetera, various other categories. So that's essentially what Lab 12 is. Most likely the due date will be, I think it'll be Sunday night. And the reason it's Sunday night is because one of the questions is what are your favorite demotivators? Here we go. You actually get to choose what your favorite demotivators are. And then you can actually find the list of all the demotivators. So I need all that data Sunday night so I can talk about that Monday in lecture. And this particular one will display all the demotivators on one page. Well, this should display all the demotivators on one page. By the time it works, it will. But anyway, it explains them in some random order, because the first time we did that, everyone voted for the 80 motivators, because apparently they didn't want to look too far down the list. Anyway, that's what Lab 12 is. I expect it will be ready in the next day or two. It'll be due Sunday night. It shouldn't take you all that long. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. So, lastly, I wanted to, for the review for today, again, I thought I'd do a Jeopardy. I was trying to think of other games to play for the review. Wheel of Fortune didn't seem to quite work because you'd have like one sentence or one word and you'd spend like a half hour getting to it. And we could do like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but again, when there's no money involved, why wouldn't you go for the next highest one? Anyway, and I'm sure there's lots of other really exciting games that are happening these days. You can tell I'm kind of doing my game shows from like 5, 10 years ago. All right, so the first question is, who wants to play Jeopardy?
I do.
Again?
Sure, I want to see if other people want to play. Raise your hands high. Who wants to play Jeopardy? It's going to be a really boring review session if I'm just playing Jeopardy with myself. Okay, come on, Ross. You want to play? Come on down. Need one more person. Let's get someone from the back. Okay, you would sit there. I need someone who can add to be the scorekeeper. The scorekeeper? Great. And I need someone to be the buzzer. Buzzer. Delga. Next.
Jonathan Myers.
Angelica.
Okay. Our scorekeeper.
Daniel Miller.
And our buzzer.
Paul.
Okay.
I love you, Brian.
So, as before,
It's with a G.
So, as before, if the contestants can't get it, we'll give a chance for the audience to do it. Please keep me honest. If someone doesn't answer it in the form of a question, you get points off. And lastly, we're going to work our way from the top to the bottom just because it's kind of hard to come up with Jeopardy questions for Java to begin with, and they kind of flow in a semi-coherent manner from top to bottom. Okay. You get to pick a category. Staticness. Okay, staticness. So that you know that you all tap in, and if there's any confusion, you should let me know if you pass from. What type of methods or fields can be accessed by object name?
What are public methods? Yeah, that's right.
So he answered the question, what is public? That's not what I'm looking for, so I'm going to push that. I'm looking specifically with static, non-static issues here. So I'm going to I'm not doing points for or against.
What are public and static methods? What are static methods?
So what is static methods your answer? Sorry, that's incorrect.
Well,
What are constructors?
What are constructors? You know what?
we haven't been studying.
Come on, what am I thinking here?
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm not sure either. The answer is both static and non-static. Remember that if we have something that is an object, such as circle C equals U circle, we can say C dot radius, that's accessing a non-static field. We can also say C dot pi, that's accessing a static field. So what this is trying to point out is that with an object name, you can do both static and non-static field / method. Ross, will let you pick.
2D array 100.
This is what a ragged array is.
What is an array whose columns don't all match up? Like you might have a 2 or 3.
Correct. So a jagged array or a ragged array is an array that has different length columns. There's a certain number, maybe it's 10 columns, and each column has a different number of rows. Right.
Visibilities for 100?
This is who can access a private variable in a class.
What is any method in that class?
Yes, any code. So remember what private means is any code within that class can access that field or call that particular method. It's private to that given class.
Visibility to 200.
This is who can access a public variable in a class.
What is any method?
Yes. So public means that any method or any code anywhere can access it. It's public to the entire world or the entire Java program that's currently being run.
Visibilities for 300.
Visibilities. These are the 4 visibilities in Java.
What are protected, private, public, and default?
Correct. So there are 4 visibilities.
I did not remember that.
We've seen public. We just talked about that. We saw private. We talked about that as well. Protected is something we have not seen yet. We will see it you'll see it in cs101. We'll talk about it a bit this Friday. And if you don't specify anything, then it's package or default, depending on what you want to call it. It's kind of the same as public. For this exam and for this course, you don't really need, you should be able to name them all, but you don't need to know what protected and package do at this point.
Visibility is 400.
This is how an external class gains access to private fields. Oh, sorry, I didn't know this was a slap.
What is writing a method in that class that is a get method, and then making an object in the other class and calling the get method.
Yes, what are access? But I'll accept that. So obviously, if you have something like radius that's private to class circle, something outside it, like circle test, can't directly access that private field. But they can call the access and the mutator methods, and through those, access the values in that particular field.
Visibilities for 500.
This is what the concept that protected visibility deals with.
Zombie check. Zombie
Is that your actual answer?
No.
He hasn't clapped.
I don't know.
Okay, audience? Anybody? Notice I have not taken cs101. It's actually, so something called inheritance. Not surprisingly, you don't have to know this on the for the exam. We're going to talk about inheritance on Friday. So,
You ran out of questions.
yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Who got the last one?
Parameters for 100.
This is a formal parameter.
What do you mean?
Audience? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? Yes.
The one bound. Wait, no, I said, what is the one bound equivalent?
I'll accept that. So, in the method itself, public, foo, parentheses, if you list your parameters, the formal parameter is the actual parameter name in the definition of the method. He said in the constructor, but I'll accept that. So it's the formal definition, the formal name of the parameter in the method. Audience, pick. What type of methods or fields can be accessed by class name?
What are public methods?
I'm gonna punt on this. I'm not looking for visibilities here.
Oh,
Okay, audience. Just call it out. As a question. Yes. Remember that if you have a static field or a static method, you can access it by the class name. Like circle.pi. There's only one pi because it's a static field in the class circle. So you can say, so you can say circle.pi because there's only one pi, so it knows which one you're talking about. You can't say circle.radius because you don't know which radius you're trying to get. Every circle object declared, and there could be 1,000 of them, has its own radius. Audience, pick. This is why we have to always cast an object removed from a vector. What is the answer to this?
What is because JCreator likes to complain about loss of precision?
Oh,
Come on.
I'm sorry, I can't accept. Loss of precision deals with numbers, specifically numbers, not that. Sorry. Yes. All right, audience. I'll accept that. So the vector remove method returns something of class object with a capital O. We have to tell Java it's really a string, it's a location, it's a person, whatever you have. So we have to cast it back because the return type of the vector is a different type. Sorry. Okay, audience. actual parameter.
What is the parameter that's passed into the method?
Correct. So what's actually passed into the method call is called the actual parameter. If I'm calling a method, whatever is actually in the parentheses, those are my actual parameters. In the method definition, the formal method above the method body, those are called the formal parameters. So, right.
I think you're winning.
Miscellaneous for 200.
When a method returns an object, this is what is really returned.
Reference? Oh, what is
Sorry,
the
that was
reference?
not in the form of a question. But yes, what is the reference?
Curse the format.
So keep in mind that when a method is returning an object, like a string, a location, something like that, what's actually returned is a reference to that object, not the object itself. Sticky. John, I'll let you pick.
Miscellaneous for 300.
What happens to 5 when return 5 is called?
Yeah, what is it? I didn't write it. That wasn't.
Okay, I'm going to punt on this one and say it was a bad question. What I was aiming for is, remember that when you return a value, what it does is it takes that value and passes it back to whoever called the method. So if I said x equals foo, and foo has to return 5, that 5 is going to be copied back into x. So the x variable will now have the value 5. That's where I was going with this. It's kind of hard to work that into a Jeopardy question. Someone pick.
Arrays for 100.
This statement creates an array x of size 5.
What is int bracket x equals new int bracket 5 bracket semicolon?
Correct. Int x bracket equals new int 5 semicolon. That will create an array. X is actually a reference to a new array of ints, and it's 5 elements long.
Array system.
When creating an array, this is what the array spots are initialized to.
Wait, what is null if nothing is?
I'm sorry, I was laughing
Oh.
at this comment.
Wait, what is? Wait, can I ask you a question about the array? Because you don't know what type of array this is.
Correct, we don't know. So in general, if you create an array, what does it initialize the spots to?
What is null?
Zero.
Is it always?
The answer, I'll accept that. The answer I'm looking for is what are default values. Depending on what you create the array of will determine what it initializes each of those spots to. An array of ints, every spot is initialized to 0. An array of strings, every spot is initialized to null. An array of booleans is initialized to false, etc. So it's initialized to its default values. Null is one of those default values.
Miscellaneous for 4.
This is how Java allows you to add a primitive value to a vector. I saw this last time.
What is the .add method?
Technically that's correct, but it's not what I'm looking for, so I'm going to punt. Audience? Yes, wrapper classes. So remember that a wrapper class, such as integer with a capital I, will take a primitive value, 5 for example, wrap it into an object, and then that object is what gets added to the vector. Audience, pick. All of it, okay.
All of it.
So if I win this,
Four
is it?
things that the statement circle C equals new circle 1.0 does.
I think I got it wrong already.
What is?
All right, we'll let you answer.
What is creates a new circle object? Creates the reference in memory. Gives the radius of 1.0 and
I'm sorry?
creates the name that points to the object, which is C.
Of course, the audience is. All right, I'll stop now. Okay, it creates the reference. It creates the object. It makes the reference point to the object, and it calls the constructor, specifically the constructor as indicated by the parameters. So it'll call the specific constructor. Keep those things in mind. Those make great test questions as well. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, there's going to be a review session. Yeah, totally just slipped my mind. There's going to be a review session tonight around 7 in Olsen 005. Sorry, it was on the announcement slides. I must have skipped over it. It's going to be a question and answer type review session. I might be a couple minutes late because I'm meeting with my TAs at 6:30, and that might run a bit over. But at 7 p.m. at Olsen 005, there'll be a review session, and you can ask me all sorts of questions, and I can get it wrong. Audience, pick. What happens to the value in the actual parameter when a method is called?
What is a copy gets sent to the method?
Yes. So remember that the actual parameter, the value in the actual parameter gets copied into the formal parameter. Then if you modify the formal parameter, you're only modifying the copy.
Parameters for 4.
Whether the value of an actual parameter can be changed in a method.
Right.
What is yes?
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I think we're at 4.
Oh.
Audience, he said what is yes or is wrong. Okay.
But
So remember that when you pass a value into a method, the actual parameter is a value you pass in. Let's say for the main method you call something else. The value that's actually in the main method, that's what is passed in. That's the actual parameter. Once the method starts up, the value in the actual parameter gets copied into the formal parameter, which is in the definition for the method. The formal parameter value, sure, you can change it all you want, but you're only modifying the copy. The original is the actual parameter, and the original can never be modified.
unless you ended up equaling.
Whether the target of a reference actual parameter can be changed in a method. Meaning if your actual parameter is a reference like string s, whether or not that actual parameter can be changed in a method.
What is yes?
Sorry, that's incorrect. What is no?
What is no?
We're on a slot before you did. Oh, wait. Did I totally misread the question?
Good morning, happy Monday to you too.
Oops. Hey, I never said I actually know this stuff. All right.
Because you can.
The reference points, when the method starts up, the reference points somewhere. And the actual parameter is still, when the method finishes, is still going to be pointing to that given spot. What the data at that spot, like the fields of that object, those can be modified. I think we did this with the rectangle thing, and we would allow the, what we did is a reference pointing to a rectangle object, we modified like the length and the width of the rectangle object. So I'll claim that I just simply got mixed up, and you'll all realize that I really don't know what I'm talking about. So she got 500 points. Okay. For me? Okay.
Arrays for 3.
When we declare an array variable x, what x really is.
What is a reference within the array?
What is a reference? So remember, if we say int x bracket bracket equals new int 5, x is really a reference to the array. The array is sitting somewhere in memory. It's actually an object, but we're kind of ignoring that. It's sitting somewhere in memory, and x is a reference to that array.
Arrays for 400.
What the statement int x bracket bracket does. Actually, I know this one.
What is creates a new array to hold ints?
Sorry, that's incorrect. He said, what is creates a new array to hold ints? Audience?
What is makes a reference to an array of int type with
No looking.
So yes.
small length?
Right. So what this does is this creates a reference. It just creates a reference. It doesn't actually make it point to anything. So if it said equals new int 10, then we create the reference, create the array, make the reference point to the array, everything would be happy. But what this does is it just creates a reference and doesn't make it point to anything. I'm losing, aren't I?
Only slightly.
I'm such a loser. Okay, audience. If a sequential search is slow, this search is fast.
What is a binary search?
Yes, a binary search is one of a number of search methods that is significantly faster than a linear search.
So we got a message.
No.
So both of them would ultimately find the item or tell you that it's not found. Some obviously work faster than others.
2D arrays for 2.
This statement creates a 6x4 2D array X of strings.
What is string bracket 6 close bracket open bracket 4 close bracket X equals new string? No, what is what is string bracket X equals new string bracket 6 close bracket open bracket 4 close bracket?
He eventually settled on. This tells it that it's a 2D array, the double sets of brackets. This tells it the dimensions. Right. Ross?
Oh, right. 2D arrays.
The name for the following array initialization: int x bracket 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 equals curly bracket 1 2 comma 3 4.
What is explicit initialization?
Sure. This is called explicit initialization. You're explicitly telling Java values to be stuck in that array.
Yeah, 400.
This is how you resize an existing array.
What is, you use an increased capacity method and you double it?
I'm sorry, that's incorrect.
Okay.
Audience? I'm sorry, that was not in the form of a question. So you can't, once an array is created, you can't change its size. You can create a new array, make your array reference point to a new array, but you can't change the size. Should we give that to them? Yeah. Of course, you're going to vote yes.
How about you subtracted points? You subtracted points. You should just add.
The President of the University of Virginia.
John C. Castina III.
Yes. I didn't say it was the first. I just left out the things. I ran out of array questions. What types of variables non-static methods can refer to?
Just let you can win my knowledge.
Audience? Yes. So remember that non-static methods, such as in the circle class, the compute area, can refer to both static fields and non-static fields. The compute area used radius, which was non-static, and used pi, which was static. What types of variables static methods can refer to?
What is only static?
Yes. So the compute pi method could only refer to think reset line. The compute pi method could only refer to static fields such as pi. And lastly, how many instances of a static field are always created?
What is one?
Yes. No matter how many objects you create, only one field, static field, is created. So, first place Angelica, second place audience, third place Ross, fourth place Jonathan, and I'm the big loser. So keep in mind, wait before you go, keep in mind this review session tonight at 7, Golden 005. Thank you to all our Jeopardy